Good morning, everyone. My name is Kaylee Mercado, and I'm a grant specialist in the Technology Implementation Office here at the Bay Area Air District. Today, I will be providing an overview of the CHARGE program, which provides grant funding for a new light-duty electric vehicle charging infrastructure installed within the Air District's jurisdiction. We will also be answering questions from participants once the presentation has concluded. Please be aware that this webinar is being recorded and that the recording will be posted on our program website. We will also be posting the presentation slides on the website. Once the presentation is finished, we will have a Q&A session. We will only be responding to questions submitted through the Q&A section, so please submit any questions you have there. Here's a quick overview of what will be covered in the webinar. I will give a quick introduction to the Air District and CHARGE program, then go into more detail regarding changes and program requirements for the current 2025 funding cycle. There will then be a section about Flux, which is our online grants portal, and I will review steps on how to submit a complete application and walk through an example application. And lastly, we will conclude with Q&A. Here's a little background about the Air District. The Bay Area Air District, or Air District, is the agency that is responsible for regulating stationary sources of air pollution in the Bay Area and protecting and improving public health, air quality, and the global climate. The Air District was established in 1955 and is the first regional air pollution control agency in the country, and it currently serves over 7 million residents located throughout the 9 Bay Area counties. The Technology Implementation Office catalyzes innovation to combat climate change by providing financial incentives to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from mobile and stationary sources. The Technology Implementation Office currently has 2 grant programs. The CHARGE program helps offset the cost of purchasing and installing chargers for passenger electric vehicles. The other program is Clean Cars for All, which provides funding for income-qualified Bay Area residents to replace their older cars with near-zero or zero emissions vehicles, electric bicycles, or a prepaid public transit card. Since 2016, the CHARGE program has provided funding for publicly accessible passenger EV chargers across the Bay Area. To date, the CHARGE program has provided over $30 million in funding to install over 4,000 charging ports locally. And the goal of the program is to increase the number of EV chargers to accommodate future growth in the EV market and achieve ambitious Bay Area and California EV adoption goals. The Air District is committed to distributing program funds equitably across the Bay Area and increasing public EV charging accessibility to all Bay Area residents. For the 2025 funding cycle, we will prioritize projects that are located at multifamily housing sites and/or projects located in priority population areas, which are defined by the California Air Resources Board. The link to the priority population areas map is provided on our program website, as well as on the presentation slides and on our program guidance document. Projects that meet one or both of these criteria are also eligible for additional plus-up funding, which will be covered later on in the presentation. The 2025 CHARGE funding cycle is now open and accepting applications until 5 p.m. on June 6, 2025. This is a competitive grant solicitation, and the Air District will only begin reviewing applications after the application period has closed. At least $10 million in funding will be available, and the Air District has a goal of awarding a minimum of 60% of the available funding to projects located in priority areas. The Air District will be accepting written questions regarding the 2025 CHARGE program until May 23rd, 2025. There will be a Q&A summary sheet uploaded onto the Charge Program website. This Q&A summary sheet will be updated periodically throughout the solicitation period. When we first started planning for the 2025 Charge Program solicitation, we had different expectations. So we want to address our funding sources and availability for the solicitation, since there have been a lot of questions about this in light of changes from the new administration. For the 2025 Charge Program, we had planned to use two funding sources: Transportation Fund for Clean Air, or TFCA, which are the Air District's regional funds, as well as funding from the federal government. Funding sources would be assigned for projects at the Air District's discretion and based on project type. We currently have $10 million available from TFCA set aside for the 2025 Charge Program. This funding is secure and not at risk. Last year, the Air District was selected to receive a $15 million grant from the Federal Highway Administration's Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Discretionary Grant Program, or CFI. Since we are anticipating this funding, we made changes to the 2025 Charge Program guidance to align with CFI requirements. If projects are awarded CFI funding for publicly accessible chargers, they will be subject to federal grant requirements such as Buy America, NEVI, NEPA, etc. More information is available in the guidance. The Air District is actively monitoring the availability of CFI funding and will update our website as we receive more information. Please note that federal requirements may be removed from the 2025 Charge Program if CFI funding is no longer available. Please sign up for the Charge mailing list on our website for future announcements and program updates. Shown on the slide are some links to useful program and application resources. I would like to highlight the program guidance document, which is the first bullet, since this document contains much of the information included in this webinar. In the guidance document, we have included important information such as application evaluation criteria, funding levels, and charger requirements. I would highly recommend reviewing the entire guidance document before submitting your application. Also, please note that applications must be submitted online through our Flux Grants portal, which is also linked on this slide. And now moving on to program eligibility requirements. Firstly, eligible applicants include businesses, homeowners associations, nonprofits, public agencies, and tribes. Please note that individual residents are not eligible to apply. Secondly, all projects must be surplus and voluntary, meaning that the funded chargers cannot be used to satisfy a rule, regulation, or an existing contractual obligation. In other words, if your project is subject to EV readiness codes, such as Cal Green, it is not an eligible project, unless the project goes above and beyond the EV infrastructure requirements of the regulation. As an example, if your project is subject to Cal Green requirements and required to install 10 new EV chargers, these 10 chargers are not eligible for Charge Program funding. However, if in addition to these 10 chargers, your project will be installing another 5 chargers, these 5 chargers are eligible for Charge Program funding. Moving on to the next eligibility requirement, no work can begin on your project until you have an executed funding agreement with the Air District. This is extremely important because if any equipment is purchased or if work begins prior to receiving an executed funding agreement, it will lead to your grant being canceled. Do not incur any costs or sign any agreements or quotes prior to having an executed funding agreement with the Air District. Applicants must be in good standing with Air District state and federal rules and regulation. And the maximum grant award is dependent on the project type and available funding source. For projects receiving TFCA, there are restrictions on the maximum grant award an applicant can receive in a given fiscal year, depending on who the applicant is. Projects that may receive CFI funding are not subject to charge program award maximums. Applicants applying for funding must meet a minimum 20% cost share requirement, meaning that the applicant or site operator must contribute at least 20% of the total project cost using their own financial resources or other stackable incentives. The federal share of the cost of any project funded by the charge program may not exceed 80% of the total eligible project cost. The table at the bottom of the slide provides an overview of eligible and ineligible project costs. Grant funding can be used to cover the costs of the chargers, charger installation and labor, as well as hardware to monitor charger usage. On the other hand, grant funds cannot be used to cover consultant fees, environmental review costs, or anything related to general charger maintenance, repairs, or subscription fees. Some of these costs may be eligible on a case-by-case basis at the discretion of the Air District, depending on the project type and location. Listed on this slide are the facility types that projects can fall into. Proposed chargers must be installed at destination facilities, multifamily housing sites, transit parking locations, or at workplace facilities. Multifamily housing sites can include chargers installed at sites that are very close to several multifamily housing buildings. However, you will need to obtain the proper authorizations and permits to install these chargers if they are located in the public right-of-way. Additionally, chargers installed at multifamily housing sites must be accessible to all residents and cannot be installed at assigned or deeded parking spaces. However, the Air District may allow assigned or deeded parking spaces for affordable multifamily housing sites or those serving below market rate units or sites located in priority areas. This is an overview of the 2025 charge program. The solicitation will stay competitive and applications will be scored and ranked according to evaluation criteria provided in the program guidance. As I mentioned earlier, we will be prioritizing applications that include multifamily housing sites and/or are located in priority areas and in regions with lower EV charger density. The 2025 charge cycle will require funded Level 2 and DC fast chargers to be operational for at least 97% of a charging site's standard hours of operation. Government-sponsored projects, as well as projects exclusively at multifamily housing sites, must qualify for a minimum of $10,000 in funding, while all other entities must qualify for a minimum of $250,000 in funding. This is the minimum amount that your project must qualify for, and the qualifying grant awards are based on the charger types and funding levels listed in the program guidance. We will be accepting applications through Flux, our online grants management system. A link to the online application is posted on the program website. Lastly, charge program funds may be stackable with other incentive programs depending on the funding source and project type, with Air District approval. Charge program recipients may receive either TFCA or CFI grant funds. Those that receive TFCA funds may explore stacking with other eligible incentive programs. Please keep in mind that it is the grantee's responsibility to ensure that they disclose all funding applied for or received to support the project as part of the reimbursement request, and that all incentive program requirements and deliverables are met. Those that may receive CFI funds will need to wait for guidance from the Air District on stacking eligibility. Listed here are the hardware requirements for funded chargers. Funded chargers can be categorized as Level 1, Level 2 low, Level 2 high, or DC fast chargers. Note that DC fast chargers are split into two categories depending on the connector output. So DC fast chargers can be between 50 to 149.99 kilowatts or 150 kilowatts or greater. Level 1 chargers may be equipped with a NEMA 515 or 520 receptacle or a J1772 connector. Level 2 chargers must be equipped with a J1772 connector, and DC fast chargers must be equipped with SAE combo connectors. North American Charging Standard, or NACS connectors, may be provided on level 2 or DC fast charging ports, so long as each charging port has the permanently attached connector stated in the guidance. All funded chargers must be publicly accessible, with the exception of projects at multifamily housing sites or projects supporting private fleets. All chargers should also be UL certified. Continuing with the charger requirements, all funded chargers must be new. Used or refurbished equipment are not eligible for funding. All funded chargers must be installed in the air jurisdiction, and there is an interactive map link provided in the program guidance for your reference. Funded chargers must meet the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Standards and requirements for interoperability and charging network connectivity of EV charging infrastructure. Charging providers will be responsible for completing a self-attestation that their hardware supports these capabilities. The California Energy Commission recommends that charging providers work with third-party labs to test for ISO 15118 conformance. Private, non-networked chargers may be exempt from network requirements on a case-by-case basis. If the funded chargers require payment to be used, the equipment models must comply with state and/or federal requirements if applicable. Additionally, charge-funded projects must be compliant with Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Training Program, or EVITP, requirements. All chargers and equipment need to be installed by a licensed contractor and at least one electrician that holds a valid EVITP certification. For projects that are installing charging ports that supply 25 kilowatts or more, at least 25% of the electricians working must have an EVITP certification. Projects with CFI funding must comply with National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, or NEVI, standards and requirements for qualified technicians. The 2025 charge cycle will require funded chargers to meet charger uptime requirements. This was included to align with the charge program with federal grant requirements. 2025 funded level 2 and DC fast chargers must be operational for at least 97% of a charging site's identified standard hours of operation for the duration of the project's operational period. The formula that we will use to calculate uptime is provided at the bottom of the slide. There is more comprehensive information about this formula in the program guidance. Excluded downtime is considered to be total minutes of charger outage in the previous year that is outside of an operator's control, such as electrical service interruptions, fault of a vehicle, scheduled maintenance, vandalism, or natural disasters. Charging outage is defined as the total minutes of charger outage in the previous year. Grantees will be required to report their project's uptime data to the Air District after the funded chargers are installed and operational. Listed on this table are the eligible charger types and funding levels for each charger type. A charging port is the system within a charger that charges one EV. A charging port may have multiple connectors, but it can provide power to charge only one EV through one connector at a time. Charging ports can fall into one of 5 charger types: level 1, level 2 low, level 2 high, DC fast 50 to 149.99 kilowatts, and DC fast 150 plus kilowatts. The charger type is used to determine each project's eligible funding level. Level 1 and Level 2 low charging ports are only eligible for funding at multifamily housing facilities. Destination, transit parking, or workplace facilities must have at least 4 network-connected Level 2 high or DC fast charging ports, or a combination of the two, in order to simultaneously charge 4 EVs. Applicants will be required to provide an estimated 5-year charger usage for their project in the application, and this estimate will become the project's usage requirement if the project is awarded funding. The usage requirement cannot be changed after the Air District scores and ranks projects. The estimated usage will be listed as the usage requirement in the funding agreement. Applicants can calculate their estimated charger usage by using their own methodology based on the number of proposed charging ports, facility types, number of parking spaces, and other contributing factors, or by reaching out to an EV charging vendor for assistance. If projects are having difficulty meeting their charger usage requirements, the Air District will work with grantees to determine how to best proceed, such as extending the project term. If afterwards grantees are still having issues meeting usage requirements or facing extenuating circumstances, they may be subject to partial repayment of the grant. On this slide, you can see the evaluation criteria for the 2025 CHARGE program. There are 7 evaluation criteria with varying point values. I want to note that these are not requirements, but rather a list of criteria we will use to score your application. For example, if you are not a minority business enterprise, you can still apply for funding, but you may receive a lower score for the qualifications category. This table can be found in the program guidance, which has been published on the CHARGE program website. This is an overview of the stages of a CHARGE-funded project, which includes 3 main phases: applying for funding for your project, installing the funded chargers, and operating the funded chargers. I will review each phase in further detail on the following 3 slides. During the application phase, you'll submit the online application by 5 p.m. Pacific Time on June 6th, 2025. This slide provides an overview of the required application documents. Before starting an application, please review the program guidance for a complete list of required documents. And as I mentioned previously, you cannot start any work on your project until you have an executed contract with the Air District. We will review, score, and rank all the applications, then notify applicants to let them know if their projects will move forward with grant funding. We'll also bring all eligible projects to our board of directors for consideration. And once the CHARGE projects have been approved by our board of directors, we'll work with applicants to execute contracts based on their rank and funding availability. We will then share copies of executed contracts with grantees, which allows them to officially start work on their projects. Please remember that we have limited funding for the 2025 cycle, and it is a competitive grant program, so unfortunately, we cannot provide funding for everyone that applies. This is an overview of the installation and reimbursement phase of the grant process for those that have executed contracts. For applicants that move forward with funding and have a fully executed contract, they'll be able to purchase chargers, execute agreements with contractors, and install the approved chargers listed in the contract. Applicants will also need to maintain insurance and provide proof of EVITP certification. For larger projects, if there are some facilities that have completed installation and the chargers are operational, you may be able to request partial reimbursement at the Air District's discretion. Once the chargers are installed, you can request the reimbursement. And to request the first reimbursement, which is up to 85% of the approved grant award amount, you will need to submit the following supporting documents: proof of payment and deposit, such as copies of canceled checks or bank statements, invoices, photos of all equipment installed with Air District stickers, which we will provide, proof that the charger information has been submitted to the Department of Energy's Alternative Fuel Database, additional documentation for CFI requirements, if applicable, depending on funding availability and project type, and details of any other grants, incentives, or rebates that were received or applied for. Please reference the program guidance for more information on the reimbursement process. And during the final phase, you'll be operating the chargers for a minimum of 5 years until the usage requirement is met. Once you have reached the completion of the project term, met all project usage and reporting requirements, you can request the final reimbursement, which will be for the remaining 15% of the grant award. If you have difficulty meeting the usage and uptime requirements listed in the contract, we will work with you to figure out the best path forward. In most cases, we allow extensions so that you have more time to operate the chargers and hopefully meet the usage requirement. And if for some reason you still can't meet usage requirements with extensions, or if you are unable to continue the project, we will have to ask you to repay a portion of the grant, and the repayment conditions are listed in the contract as well. For example, if you could only meet 50% of the required usage listed in your contract, you will only be entitled to receive 50% of the grant award. And in some cases, that means you may need to return funds to the air district. During this operational phase, you may also be involved in audit and inspection processes where participation is mandatory and part of the terms and conditions of the funding agreement. Failure to comply with audit and inspection processes may lead to repayment of the grant. This is an overview of the charge solicitation period and milestones. After the solicitation deadline of June 6th, 2025, we are aiming to review all applications, followed by board approval and contracting through late 2025 and potentially early 2026. While there will be a question and answer session at the end of this presentation, since this is a competitive solicitation, we will also be accepting written questions until May 23rd, 2025. The questions and answers will be posted on our program website for everyone to access. We will be responding to questions and continue to post biweekly updates until June 6, 2025. Applicants are welcome to reach out to us to schedule meetings for additional assistance at the email on the slide. General questions can be submitted via the question submittal form. We highly encourage you to review the program website and guidance before applying. If you have questions, please reach out. Moving on, I'll now go over how to apply to the CHARGE program. For the CHARGE program, we use a grants management system called Flux, which includes a grants portal. The application is now open and you can access the application and user guide on the CHARGE program website. Once you have navigated to the website, you will need to create a Flux account using the link on the bottom right-hand side of the page. If you are an existing user from a previous funding cycle, you can use your current credentials to log into your account. For first-time applicants, you'll need to fill in your basic information. This process is similar to creating accounts for other online services. Please note that the email address you provide will be your login username. After you have submitted your basic information, you will see this message from Flux to check your email. When accessing your email, you should see an email to verify your account. After clicking the verification link to verify your account, you will need to set your password. Once you've created your account or have logged into an existing account, you will arrive at your dashboard. On the left side of the screen, you will be able to use the toolbar to navigate to various components such as applications, reports, and payments. To apply, click on the Charge Program button. You'll notice there's also a button to apply to the Clean Cars for All program, so please double check to make sure you're applying to the Charge program. To add facilities and charger information to your application, under the Facility Information section, click on the plus icon as shown in step number 1. After clicking the plus icon, you will see the facility form as shown in step number 2. This is where you'll provide facility information such as the address, facility type, and also add charger information. Please keep in mind that one project can have multiple facilities. For step number 3, you will need to click the plus button under the charger information section to add charger types to your facility. On the right side of this slide, step number 4, you'll see the expanded view of the charger form to add charger information. Also, Please remember to click the Save button after you enter in information. For each facility, you'll need to upload required documents such as the charge facility form, maps, charger specification sheets, and quotes. Please reference the guidance for a list of required attachments. Additionally, we have posted sample application documents on our program website. Please keep in mind that one facility can have multiple charger types. And lastly, you can also reach out to us if you're having technical difficulties with the application. Note that each application must have at least one facility and one charger type associated with each facility, in addition to the required documents. Incomplete applications with no facilities or charger information may be rejected and/or scored and ranked lower. There is also a sample Flux application and user guide on the Charge Program website for your reference. These documents will provide an example of the fields you'll see in the application. Lastly, please remember to include your organization name in your application before saving your application. Without an organization linked to an application, the application itself will not function properly and you will not be able to see many required application fields. You will not be able to edit your application after saving if you do not include an organization name. If you're having issues with starting an application, please reach out to us. And this concludes the presentation. If you haven't already submitted your questions using the Q&A function, please do so now. We will answer questions until about 11 a.m. If we do not get to your questions today, we will be responding to each one and publishing the response to the program website. First question is, regarding pre-approval, if an energy service company signs a contract with an end user, does this violate the pre-approval requirement? For example, energy service company signs the agreement with end user but does not purchase EV equipment or sign install subcontractor agreement. No contract should be signed prior to receiving an executed funding agreement from the Air District for the Charge Program award. Question number 2. Why do level 2 chargers need a J1772 connector, but low power doesn't? This is because NEVI requires that grant-funded level 2 high chargers need a permanently attached J1772 connector. Next question. If we are an HOA applying, do we need to have a vendor/contractor pre-selected for our application? The HOA can request quotes from vendors, contractors, or licensed electricians to complete a charge program application. The HOA can seek out potential options, but cannot sign any agreements or commit to any vendor. Next question. Do chargers need to be California Type Evaluation Program or CTEP certified? Grantees need to be compliant with all local, state, and federal requirements. Please check with the cities and counties that you are looking to install chargers at to learn more about CTEP requirements. Would the Air District consider eliminating the usage requirement and simply have applicants detail estimated charging utilization in their proposals? So there are no charger usage requirements for the 2025 charge program. The usage requirement is set by the grantee. So in the application, the applicant estimates their 5-year charger utilization, which then becomes the quote unquote usage requirement listed in the funding agreement. Next question. Would the Air District consider eliminating the security interest provision, instead incorporating retainage or clawback provisions in the award contract, which would still provide protection for the program while maintaining simplicity and administrative efficiency? So the Air District already has retainage and clawback provisions in the award contract. For grantees that are looking to eliminate this security interest provision, we can discuss the contract terms at a later time. Next question. Would the Air District consider eliminating the requirement that cost estimates include quotes from licensed contractors and be endorsed by a California licensed engineer and simply allow applicants to detail their estimated labor costs in their proposals? We will not be eliminating this requirement as it is a critical one for the Air District to evaluate projects, determine a project's eligibility, and to determine funding levels. Will co-located battery energy storage be an eligible cost if it only serves the EVSE? No, battery energy storage is not considered an eligible cost under the charge program. Are operations, networking, maintenance costs normally charged to the property owner eligible for charge program fund reimbursement? Operations and maintenance costs may be reimbursed by the charge program depending on the project type and project's funding source. So we will discuss this with applicants during the evaluation process. What needs to be done to ensure private chargers for multifamily housing are exempt from public accessibility requirements? Multifamily housing properties can request funding for private chargers. Can you please reiterate the required hours for workplace chargers during the operational phase? This will be dependent on the workplace's hours of operation. Are awards stackable with utility rebates? This depends on the project type and designated funding source. For those that receive TFCA funding, these projects can stack with utility rebates. It is up to the grantee to follow all requirements of their respective funding sources. Will curbside chargers be considered given that multifamily housing units lack parking and/or garages? Curbside chargers will be considered. However, applicants will need to work closely with the authority having jurisdiction, such as cities, to ensure compliance. What are the kilowatt hour requirements for level 1 and level 2 low power chargers? Level 1 chargers need to have an energy output of 1.4 to 2.4 kilowatts per charger. Level 2 low chargers need an energy output of 3.3 to 5.99 kilowatts. For market rate multifamily housing properties, and just going back on the kilowatt hour requirements for level 2 low. So this is the minimum. The kilowatts stated in the guidance are the minimums. So we've gotten questions about, if there's load sharing, they wanted the level 2 low to be able to have a higher output. It's okay if the output is greater than 5.99 kilowatts. These are just the minimum requirements to get the funding for that level of charger. For market rate multifamily housing properties, the only funding available is for guest parking. Then, since assigned or deeded parking is not eligible, for market rate multifamily housing, you can still apply for funding, and we may consider this project on a case-by-case basis. The eligibility depends on the project's location and other variables. When are applications due? The application period is open now until 5 p.m. on June 6th. Can applications be submitted by EVCS providers on behalf of multifamily owners, or must the owners submit? Either the EVCS providers or multifamily housing owners can submit the application, but whoever submits the application will be the entity that is awarded the grant and will be responsible for paying for all upfront costs, reporting requirements, etc. At what point will we find out if our project has been awarded with TFCA or CFI funding? Are there any factors that would determine which funding source a project will be awarded with? We would communicate this with the grantee when they are awarded the grant. There are many variables that determine which funding source we assign projects to. To confirm, the minimum grant amount is per application, and a project can involve multiple facilities/sites. The minimum grant amount per application is $250,000 for all projects, except for multifamily housing projects and government-sponsored projects, which are subject to a $10,000 grant requirement. And yes, a project can have multiple facilities. Is there an estimated time frame on when we will find out if CFI funds are no longer available and federal requirements will be removed? We will provide updates as soon as we can. We are actively monitoring CFI funds. Are solar systems to support daytime workplace or public opportunity charging eligible as program costs? And in either case, will their provision add to or detract from scores? So solar systems are not an eligible project cost. However, projects with solar may receive additional points during the scoring process. Okay, so we can't get to everyone's questions live today, but we will be posting the responses to all the questions on our website in the coming weeks. Please reach out to us via the question submittal form or the charge inbox for additional questions or assistance. Thank you all so much for attending today's webinar. The application period is open until June 6th. Please visit our website for additional information. Thanks. I hope you all have a great day.